Hi, and welcome to a Small, Medium, at Large podcast. I'm your host, Gail Heisen, bringing you intimate stories that heal. Before we start our show today, I just wanted to say a large round of applause, gratitude, thank you to all the people who've listened to our show, liked our show, shared our show, subscribed to us on YouTube, and have sent in some really, really beautiful comments. I've been trying to figure out how to reply to all of them, so eventually I'll get that down. But for right now, any of you out there who I haven't replied to, just let you know how much I loved hearing from you. So thanks, guys. So today we have a very special guest coming to us from the East Coast, Elly Molina. Elly Molina is an international advisor to public figures, celebrities, and entrepreneurs. She's the creator of the Psi-Kids Academy, a program that helps children and their parents unlock a child's natural mind power and potential. Elly hosts the weekly live podcast, Ask Elly, where she answers questions and shares her wisdom. She is the author of the Amazon bestseller, Children Who Know How to Know, a resource guide to helping children develop and utilize their powerful and intuitive abilities. Currently, she is working on a new sci-fi novel. So today, let's welcome Elly to our show. Hi, Elly.
Hi, Gail. Thank you for having me. Very excited. Thank you.
Well, before we start talking about your life and your work, I just want to say how grateful I am to know that there's someone out there teaching and zeroing in on children, that it's not all adults, and the importance of what it is to be able to open up a child who's already open to the universe from being so young and hasn't been bombarded with a whole lot of stuff yet. And that there's someone like you out there offering this kind of teaching in different ways and forms is just, I just am so grateful. I wish you had been around when I was 7 or 8, but that wouldn't have been possible. So I first like to I like to always start off with, tell me what your childhood and your family and upbringing was like, and is that what brought you down this path of psychic and intuitive abilities, or was that something that happened to you later in life, or how did this all occur for you?
So it started very young, obviously, and I believe that all children are, that we're all psychic, and that one of my beliefs is that we need to start looking at our sixth sense as if it were our first sense and not make it anything that is abnormal. So when I was really young, I, like many other children, started having experiences. I would have these really vivid dreams. I would see the deceased walking among us, and I have conversations, and then I would be able to, it didn't happen a lot, I predicted someone passing away, and kind of at that moment, I won't say that it freaked out my parents, but it really had them like, okay, what's going on here? And my mother was very instrumental, when I look back and I look at my years, as somebody who encouraged all of this. She didn't make me wrong about it. And so they knew that I enjoyed all of this psychic work. So by the time I was 12, my mother handed me a book, Linda Goodman's Sun Signs book, and said, here, go enjoy. And I just became so, I'm going to say, addicted to astrology at that time and telepathy, that whereas other people were doing other things, I was playing telepathy by myself with a deck of cards and looking to see. And then I would be talking to my friends and looking to engage them in this psychic work. However, the circumstances, the time when I grew up, this was taboo, and this was, the very weird, okay, we had One Step Beyond, we had the Twilight Zone, we had Alfred Hitchcock. This was my life. I that's what I watched all the time. And for me, One Step Beyond and Twilight Zone was almost real. So but it wasn't that way for other people. And so I was constantly invalidating myself and my intuition and working against my own intuition in order to, quote unquote, fit in. And so then as I became an adult, and I started teaching, because I spent almost all of my life teaching, I started to notice how the kids were so psychic and so intuitive. And this was back in the 80s when I was teaching middle school. And I just knew that, oh, I got to work with this. I've got to find a way to work with this within the curriculum. And it became a real lifelong passion, Gail. I mean, I remember picking up Stranger in a Strange Land and saying to myself, you know what? This is real stuff and we can do this. We can all do telekinesis. I knew it intuitively. I just knew it. And I still believe this. And I believe we've all been able to do this, but it's been lost and suppressed. And now we have to bring it back to the world and have conversations about it.
So, am I correct in saying then, as you were growing up, you were having experiences from your childhood on, and the only sources you were really finding to be able to validate or feel that the things you were doing weren't necessarily not real was by seeing shows on TV and reading books that were, say, sci-fi, but for you, they were more of what's really going on. So
Yes.
so there was no other resources then for you to go to except for books and shows on TV. So there was no
Right.
one like you around doing anything to offer for you at that stage in your life.
No, not that I knew of. Okay. It was even pretty much taboo to even be talking about having psychic experiences. And even going to a psychic was one of those, you know, in New York, you go to the psychic and they're there today and then they're not there next week. All right. Kind of like the whole gypsy idea that they just pack up and leave. And so like, it's just, yeah, it wasn't the thing to do. And
I,
it wasn't encouraged.
I have to say, when I was reading about your feelings about that word psychic, they were exactly the same feelings I've had. It's been very hard for me to ever say, I've never would say as I was growing up or, you know, even in later years that I was psychic. It always drew up a picture to me of a lady with big earrings and lips, big red lips and, you know, kind of a, you know, a gypsy sort of look, but really it's a charlatan who's going to take your money and just tell you things. So that was what I was. So I was like, oh, I don't ever want to be that, you know?
Right. Yeah. And it was funny because that was my first Halloween costume. Okay, the gypsy costume was my first with the big earrings, and
Yeah.
I had pierced ears when I was a kid, and that was another thing that was not done in New York at the time when I was a child. So it was pretty interesting. And I was like, I kind of claimed it from really early on and then worked against the grain. Then I got very conservative, especially in my early 30s, where it was really kind of really frowned upon, you know, just don't tell anybody, kind of like that. But then I couldn't keep it down. There's just, you know, we are who we are, and at some point I believe we just have to acknowledge, we have to give ourselves permission to be who we are, whether people like what we're doing or they don't like, or they agree or they don't agree. We've just got to give ourselves permission to be.
And to remember to continue listening to our inner voice that sometimes gets squashed when we're a kid. And
Mhm.
it's really important for that voice to keep, because the more you listen, the louder the voice gets.
Yeah.
And at times in life, I know when I forget sort of that connection, that's when I'm not really connected in myself. It's really
Right.
important for you to be that. So tell me, do you have children that you have raised yourself that you have done this with, or family children, or was this something you just only started out in the classroom doing, or how did this evolve with working with children, which is just a wonderful thing that you're doing?
Well, I have three of my own children, and I started, I started early with them, but not just early in the conversation, so that the conversations became, this was normal. And so not to invalidate their intuition and always to trust their intuition. And I encourage them to play around with tarot cards and play around with crystals and, you know, all kinds of things that we would call magic, but always, again, trusting your intuition and having those conversations. And it was my, well, this is going to now go off on a tangent, but it was my youngest son who really had more of the experiences than the other two. because by the time my youngest son was in 6th grade, I had to make a decision that he wasn't going to continue going to New York public schools. And that I wanted something very, very different for him. So I found a school in Washington State that was called, at that time, it's no longer in existence, it's called the Children's School of Excellence. And it taught remote viewing, blindfolded archery, neuroscience, telepathy, telekinesis.
Wow.
And I said, I want to not only teach there, but I want to live there, and I want my youngest son in this school. And so we made a very abrupt shift where I ended up leaving. I was a teacher in New York City, so I ended up taking an early retirement and then going to teach in Washington so that I could be a part of that school. And so, but before I got to that school, I had been doing this work even in New York City inner schools, because I felt that once The Secret came out and What the Bleep came out, I felt, okay, if those can be out in the public, then I can start doing things in the classroom that are considered kind of normal. All right, let's put it like that. Like affirmations would be normal, empowerment would be normal. And so I started dipping around into that realm. And then I had a very, very wonderful administrator at the time. And she said, you know what, I'm going to give you permission to create a course. This is now New York City, 2007, I believe, or six or seven. And she said, I'm going to give you permission to create a course, and it will be an enrichment program. And you can meet with the kids once a week and for the entire year. And we divided them up into 4 quarters, so that 4 semesters, so that I got to work with a group of 20, 40, 80 kids. And we met every Friday for 2 hours, and I did enrichment, and we really extended this into remote viewing and telepathy, because it was part of the enrichment program. And then of course, affirmations and visualization. And it was amazing. It was so much fun for the kids, and they were very empowered. So from that, then I jumped, okay, now that's New York City, and I still don't have free reign, and I can't do everything that I want to do. And here's a school that is going to allow children to do blindfolded archery on a field and teach telepathy and telekinesis. I mean, like, this is about heaven for me. I need to be there. So we packed up, my youngest son and I left, and my older sons were older by then, and they chose to stay in New York, and we went. And then as the story unfolded, the school then lost its funding, and for the older children, so my son went into public school, but the parents, and then some of the parents that were there, we co-founded another version of this school, so that we were able to work with the children who were in pre-K to 4th grade, and we were able to bring that. We lasted almost, I would say, a good maybe 6 or 7 months before we lost our funding also. And then I went solo.
Well, I have to say, when my kids were young and we were all watching every episode of Harry Potter, every film of Harry Potter, when you see the school, the Hogwarts school, it was like, if I had a school like that, I wouldn't have dropped out of high school. I would have been able to stay in school. But there was nothing like that being taught in the curriculum in the New York City schools. And I hadn't had you as a teacher.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying there's a real need for that. And knowing that there was something like that and your son got to go through that experience is wonderful. And is he today also continually remote viewing and using his abilities that he learned through going through this schooling and things like this?
He doesn't remote view, but he does use his, I'm going to call it, he does highly rely on his intuition to navigate what's next for him. Mm-hmm.
So he got some good tools then
Oh, he's got great tools. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's really wonderful. So now, tell me, so then you started doing this on your own, and this is what got you on this path. And I know that you have a book that you have that I'd love to hear about, which is Children Who Know How to Know. I don't know of any book written like quite like that, that is going to be something that's, well, after I was reading, I said, I want to recommend this. You know, my friends are all having grandchildren right now. Their children are all quite growing up. And I have to say, I did the same thing at my house where we had Linda Goodman Sunshine book. It's my daughter's favorite. I had tarot cards and ruins and I Ching and all these different activities. I have a remote viewing game so that these things were all in the house for my kids to play with as they were living with their mother, who was doing these sort of things all the time. But my youngest daughter is always very skeptical and doesn't believe in any of these things. I find it very interesting to see how your children react to what you
Mhm.
do or who you are.
Yeah, it's
And
true. Mhm.
and with each of them, which I assume was the same for you, there were many instances where I knew things about them that there was no way I would know about it and would tell them. And it's from those instances that they started to say, oh, well, it's mom,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
When you meet up with parents, and so tell me how the whole process goes about. Like, do people come to you from your website, or how do you engage? And do you have classes? I know because of COVID, things are different and things are more online, but tell our listeners exactly what you do now.
thank you for asking. So I want to just backtrack because it's real important. What I do is not just, I call it the phenomena. The phenomena is being able to um, perform telepathy. The phenomena is being able to remote view. The phenomena is being able to do blindfolded archery or even perform telekinesis. That is the phenomena. And that is only a part of it. So the majority of my work is in ontology and conscious raising and emotional intelligence, because I believe that the more emotionally intelligent, the more consciously aware, and the more the more emotionally intelligent a child is, the more consciously aware a child is, the more aware a child is in who they are being and what they are up to with their intentions and awareness, the easier that the phenomena can be transferred into empowerment and into having more mature conversations and developing themselves into really fine adults with high leadership qualities and high level of self-confidence and empowerment. So that is where I work, but I do the phenomena first. So the idea is that we start with the phenomena, and I teach right now, because of COVID, everything is online, and I created a brand new online psychic development course for children, and it's called Psi-Kids and it's called Make Magic Happen. So this is an online course that parents can purchase for their children, and they can go through the course. And then it's, of course, I teach just like I'm talking to you now. So there's video, there's instructions, there's material, and the children can go through this with their parents. So it's really designed for children. Children can start as early as 3 with parental approval. I mean, not approval, with parental supervision. Because one of the things that I also teach is, and to me, this is really vital, is being able to control the body. So the body has its own mind, the body fidgets, the body does all of these things. And in remote viewing and in psychic work, especially being able to see really over time, distance, and space, one needs to be able to remove the body. So I teach children as early as 3 years old how to tuck away their body and sit still for prolonged periods of time. Because when we can go into a prolonged period of time of sitting still and doing, let's say, candle focus, lots of things open up, a lot of information is given to us, and a lot of things happen mentally, psychically, that is unavailable, because now that we're going into a much deeper state of, we're going into deeper than alpha for the children. They're really dropping down into theta over here, and not theta, I'm sorry, delta, no, theta. And so they're really dropping down, and so many things get to open up. So it was in that state where we tuck away the body that we then do remote healing or remote really remote healing for the planet, remote healing for people that we know, remote healing for situations, and the children really know how to do this and participate. So in my program, I teach these things also, as well as psychic ability, remote viewing, and telepathy, and that's all in, and the consciousness at the same time. So there is that aspect of ontology. Who are you being at all moments?
I'm thinking how valuable this is at this present time, when in the headlines we have these crazed mass shootings in schools by other students, and how, if other children had heightened awarenesses, they would be able to sense that danger was going to be coming before it was coming, and be able to protect themselves, to be in a room or a desk or a place. But even more, if this could be in school systems to help the children who are the ones doing the shooting,
I say that.
to learn about, I'm not sure why there's so much violence in schools now. I mean, when we grew up, you didn't hear of any of these kind of things, and we didn't have any, no matter how many things were, we had, there was some integration was going on, and that was causing, some different incidents happening in schools in New York at the time. But there wasn't a lot of shooting and killing and things that we're seeing that are going on throughout the country. It doesn't matter whether it's a big city or a small city. And so I think this supports the idea that maybe the educational curriculum isn't everything it should be that they're putting there. And someone like you should be able to go in and be able to help by offering another type of course or way of teaching, so that there can be more consciousness, and the level of consciousness could be raised amongst these students.
Yeah, well, this is a wonderful point, Gail, and this is one of the challenges, because it's got to be done from the administrative level, and then it's got to be done. The educators have to have this awareness, and this is where we then get into I don't know if I want to call it problems, because I believe that there's always a solution for everything. But in the antiquated system that exists in New York City, and I can't speak for every other school district, but for the machine, for the institution, they're slow to change. There's always a political agenda behind it. And so educators are not really educated in the nuances of their teaching the way that they were taught. And anybody going through an educational training program, yeah, maybe you'll get a little bit of mindfulness, but is there anything, there's no real deep psychology. There's no training in language and thought and the way the mind works. There's no connection between the words that are coming out of your mouth and the thoughts that you have, and the responsibility that, so a lot of educators are just still punitive. And it is the way that we were taught, sit down and be quiet. If you don't do this, you're going to go to the detention room, and then we're going to put you on medication. And the entire institution is not designed to encourage children. Children are not supposed to be sitting all day long for 8 hours in a room listening to somebody.
Listen, I would go into hysterical fits of laughter in a classroom. And my math teacher, who ended up years later becoming my mother-in-law, which is an unusual thing. And this was in junior high school in Flushing in Queens. I would be sent to the dean because I couldn't stop laughing. But I was really exploding with this joyous laughter that's very contagious. So it would make everyone else in the classroom start to laugh.
Right.
And so I was punished for that in her class. But in my science class with Mr. Posner, he always loved the laughter. So instead of sending me to the dean and saying this is a bad thing, he'd say, Gail's having a laughing fit. Let's all take a 5-minute break. We'll all have a good laugh, and then we'll get back to our class.
Right.
So I understand that. Tell me, what was your trainings like? Did you, my remote viewing, I'd never been trained as a remote viewer. I just started doing remote viewing for Russell Targ and Dean Radin back in 1998. And I didn't know I could do that sort of thing. They just said, well, we want you to, draw a picture that's going to be shown in the future. How did you come across remote viewing, and who did you train and work with?
Okay, so I too do not have formal training. So I'll tell you where I picked up the little bit of formal training that I do have. But for me, it was part of the ability to see. Okay, like again, doing this psychic work. So I do work. I've always I've worked part-time as a psychic for many, many years. I used to be a California psychic under a synonym. I used to do readings at my home when my kids were little. People would come over. I worked the Long Island Psychic Fair. So I did that part of that was always there. And so it was easy for me to see things, but there was no formal training. And then as time went on, I called it remote viewing because that's what else are you going to call it? Seeing over time, distance, and space. It is basically remote viewing. It's just not the same remote viewing as we know Paul Smith and Lynn Buchanan and the Ingo, people who Daz, all of the people in the community who are fabulous remote viewers, but it's not that kind of formal training. And then it was in 2015, through a bunch of coincidences or synchronicities, so to speak, that I came across the remote viewing, the International Remote Viewing Association, IRVA. And I knew that I had to be a part of it. I just knew that I had to be there. So I sent in a proposal to see if I could speak, and they said, yeah, absolutely. So for 3 times now, this is my last at Omega when we were there in September, was the 3rd time that I've been a guest at the International Remote Viewing Association. So to be able to speak. And I found here was a tribe, people who spoke my language, thought it's totally normal. It's very scientific. It is a skill anybody can learn. So it was during the IRVA presentations and then meeting people at IRVA that I started to learn how to do how to actually remote view, okay, with the stages and the analytical overlays and all of the information that goes with that. And then I've taken a couple of little online courses here and there. But what I've noticed, Gail, and I don't know if this is just because we learn one way first and then we can't, maybe I'm an old dog that couldn't unlearn the new trick, but I find that when I start using the ideograms and I start working it the way that it is quote unquote taught officially, I'm not as good as when I just go do free, let's call it free fall or free, go do my associative remote viewing and don't worry about an ideogram and don't worry about the protocol and just go see what you got to see.
Let me say, not only do I agree with you 100% for types like you and I, who are just naturally doing this without training, but I was wondering the answer to that question, because here I was, and it was, I think, early 2000, and we were in an IRVA conference in Austin, Texas. So I was invited by Russell Tart to join him at a barbecue at Hal Putoff's house. And I figured, well, when I met Hal and his wife, and he had just such a beautiful family, and just the whole experience was so positive, that I felt, even though he was this well-known man, I would just ask him my little silly question, which I'd been carrying around inside me, because nobody ever said to me, are you trained as a remote viewer? They just said, you're doing remote viewing. So I thought, geez, should I be taking these classes? Is that going to make me get better? Will I do a better job if I follow their ways? And so I went up to Hal and I said to Hal, I said, I've been doing this sort of thing all my life, but just naturally. And now I'm thinking I should be taking these courses like all the people here that are all trained and they have their CRV and their coordinates and all these other things. And he said to me, you don't need to do any of that. If it's natural for you, you want to keep it natural. He said, if you try to train yourself to do something else, he said, you can lose your abilities. And I thought, good advice. And I didn't got myself crazy anymore that I wasn't enough for everyone because I didn't have a course or I didn't study with somebody particular. And he answered the question that was very, it was really bothering me, because I wanted to do the best job I could do in being a subject in these experiments for these scientists. And I went back with okay, I'm just going to do natural. I don't need to sign up and take a course. So
Yeah.
it's very validating to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, thank you. It works the same way for me because I'm sitting here. I was like, okay, I've got this ideogram and these coordinates, and I see something red and white, but I'm doing an AOL over here, and it just yeah, it doesn't work. I'm still practicing it though. I'm not ready to give that up. I still want to see if it's, but I don't want to lose what I got going also. So
Right. There
I don't
is,
think I will. I don't think so.
no, there is something, I'm not sure if you've used the two apps that Russell created that were
Yes,
designed, the ESP trainer
yes.
and
Mhm.
the uh,
The new one that came
Stargate,
out.
Stargate ESP.
Yes. Mhm.
My husband created both of those for Russell.
Oh, beautiful.
So I was here, I was a beta tester, really doing through all these. The first one, the ESP trainer, has been around for years and years now.
Yes. Yes.
But the Stargate ESP has only been around this year because it was just finished in 21.
Mhm.
And I find things like that, it's not like really a trainer to me. It's something to use that teaches me how to know when the information comes quickly, that's really the answer. And if I start to think about, well, what color is really the picture behind, then that'll never be the correct one. It's also always taught me how sometimes we can remote view ahead. And so that
Yes.
I'm thinking,
Yes.
oh, the one is going to be green, and of course the next one is green, or what. So it's always like the next color, but not the one that I'm first thinking.
Mhm.
So I find those tools to be nice tools to work with for, and especially with children, the ESP trainer, it's just little square colors and you're picking where's the picture behind. And
Yeah.
kids can
Yeah.
have fun with that. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to be sure,
Absolutely.
so you know about that. So now tell me, let's say I was a parent, is always you do work with the parent and the child when so it's always a parent and child. And is the parent actually developing their abilities, or are they just having the child participate and they're just being there to support the child's work?
So good, thanks for the question. So in the classes that I taught in physical being, the parents had to participate with the children also. And even though, and the reason why initially it was the kids were doing the work and the parents were there because they didn't want to leave their kids alone, and some of the kids were too young to be left alone, so the parents were kind of like in the peanut gallery watching. And then what happened was that the parents became so involved, they wanted to do it just as much as, maybe even more than the kids wanted to do it. I said, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to do parents and kids. So everybody's going to sit next to each other, and we're going to do it this way, and it'll be in a group setting, and we'll do it this way. So I do work parents and kids. And then in 2000, during COVID, Marty Rosenblatt from right. So Marty and I created a Psi-Kids and adult program online in 2020 then. And so what Marty and I did was I worked with the children and Marty worked with the adults. And so Marty did the remote viewing with the adults so that they knew what was going on. I worked with the children so the children would do it the way that I wanted to teach it, which is different, of course, than having I don't use the ideogram with the kids or any of that. We use different skills. And so Marty and I were doing that, and the course was really quite fun. And now the way that I've done it online is that all of the exercises are there, so the parents have the option if they want to do it with the child also. So it can be done alone, or it can be done with an adult. I personally think it's better to do it, this is my opinion, to do it with an adult because of the way that the lectures are, so that they can have conversations that are meaningful. Kids don't want to just, you teach a kid to do something and then you have not that you have a negative parent or anything like that, but you want the parent to be 100% on board and be as engaged in this and have conversations around what's possible as much as Yeah, as often as you can, so that it is a conversation that happens in the home as to what are the possibilities that exist besides our five senses and our third dimensionality. So much is possible. So let's explore that. Let's have those conversations. Let's take this to a whole other realm.
So when you do this with children, do you use the same sort of things that I've been doing with all these years in remote viewing for others? Is it's a photograph of a place in the world, or it's an actual object that they hold in their hand, and then you remote view this? Do you do the same thing with children? Would it be pictures of,
It's pictures.
Yosemite or?
Similar. And I also teach kids to work with, well, when we were in person, we were doing telekinesis, which is not something that I can do on the internet. I don't think so. Okay. So maybe there is, but I'm not there yet. So especially the group of kids that I'm working with, they still need to start learning and believing. And again, that it's in the language, because I spent a lot of time, Gail, talking and getting people ready to understand that when you tell yourself that you can do it, you're going to do it. So, I'm not working with people or kids that are going to say, I can't do this. I can't do this. So they've got to be prepped. They've got to be primed for this. Otherwise, you tell yourself you can't do it. Don't even bother. Okay. It's not going to work. So maybe usually it does. But one of my favorite stories, and if you ever look at my online stuff or you see some of my Facebook posts, one of my favorite photos was I was doing a psychic development course for adults, and it was online, and there was a photo of a manila envelope on the screen, and one of the moms, the kid who was 5 years old, walked by, and he said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "Oh, I'm looking to see what's in that envelope." Oh, he goes, "Oh, that's easy." And he took a piece of paper and he drew this figure of a guy with a sword, and then he wrote down power and dragon. And I don't have it right here to show, but anyway, he drew, it's on my Facebook page, and it's on my Psi-Kids website somewhere, but he drew a picture of a man holding a sword, and he wrote there power and dragon. And the image was a picture of a character of Jon Snow from Game of Thrones, who, as we know, is of power and has to do with dragons, and was holding a sword. And so the mom freaked out. Everybody in the course, and this was all live, everybody in the room saw what was going on. And it's like, oh my goodness. And then that just opened up the door, yeah, of course kids can do this. So of course. Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter how often I've done remote viewing or how many I've done. I always feel like I'm not sure if it's going to work when it happens. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I just have to let it be whatever it'll be. Otherwise, I feel like there's too much pressure that you're performing. And I can't feel like that when I'm doing it. I have to sort of just feel relaxed and then let what happens. So Russell calls me every now and then for testing for an object that he's going to use on teaching remote viewing to students or other people. So he called me up, I don't know, 6 months ago or something, and said, I have an object in my hand. And this was how simple it was. But, I'm busy doing stuff. He's just calling me on the telephone. We don't have any setup, or I'm not meditating. There's nothing going on. We're not in a quiet room or anything. And he says, so can you just tell me what's in my hand, Gail? And I'm like, I'm busy in the kitchen. I say, oh, okay, what's in your hand? Okay. And there's something about the way that he allows you to just be relaxed into doing this that gives me some, I don't know, some kind of support, that it makes it very easy for me to do these things with him. So I said to him, oh, I said, it's very colorful. I said, there's all kinds of colors shooting up. I said, and the colors are all I said, the best way I could describe it would be like when you hold sparklers and you're a kid and the lights are all shooting up and you're seeing reds and blues and, all the colors coming up. And he says, And by the way, for our audience listening, it's all in just this amount of minutes that we do this. It's not like a 15-minute process. It's a few minutes. And I say to him, I said, that's about what I see. He said, well, you're 99% correct. He said, I'm going to send you what it is so you'll see yourself. So I'm going to show you on the screen, which I might have shown our listeners before, but it was this device, and which you hold in your hand, and it's just like that, and its colors going up. But in my mind, I'm thinking like of sparklers, because I'm not thinking of techie LED light kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's the analytical overlay when you're finding that, you know, you have to find an object that can kind of coincide with what is that you're getting. And every time he does this, I'm able to successfully tell him what's in his hand, even though when he calls me, I always say, I don't know if I could do that right now.
Right, right. Yeah. It's true, though. It really is. You know, I'm going to share a little story. One of the ways that I practice, I have a deck of playing cards, and my cards have a smiley face on them. So the front of the card has a smiley face. And then I just sit there in the morning, and I don't meditate or anything. I just sit quietly and I listen to, well, maybe it is a little bit meditation. I listen to some free music that has a particular frequency, and I rub my hands on the card, and I talk to it, you know, because these things are real for me. Everything is real. And so I talk to the card and I'll say, show me who you are, show me who you are. And then I'll, like, example, 8 of clubs. And then I turn it over. And what happens is that there are times where, that's, I like to write this down, because there are times where I'll get the 8 of clubs. I'll say 8 of clubs, but it's not the first card. It's the third card or the second card, as you were saying before. And it's really great to have that, or it'll be an 8. So I put them into piles. But Gail, there was one time where I don't know, do I use the word frightened, or was it I don't know what happened to my body. So I got on there and I'm like, okay, 8 of clubs. I turn it over. It's the 8 of clubs. So, okay, I do it again. All right, show me who you are. Ace of spades. Boom. Okay, number 2. All right, that was kind of weird. 2 in a row, first time. Usually it takes me a little bit to warm up. All right, let's go in here and do this again. I forget what it was. 2 of hearts. Oh, boom. By the 4th card, when I did it the 4th time and I had the answer again correctly, something happened in my body and it was like, whoa, okay, this is like too much. I'm putting this down. So I'm not going to do with you guys anymore today. I have no idea. Again, like, I like to understand these things. I was like, okay, I don't know what just happened over there. I didn't have to take time. I didn't have to practice. It was like boom, 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 boom. And then after the 4th one, I just shut it off. I think I was afraid of failure. Honestly, I think it was like, okay, you got 4 in a row. You didn't even do anything. So let's just stop while you're ahead. Plus, I don't know what's going on.
You know, I've said this before. When I hit a target or have an experience with knowing this about someone else, or a death, or any of these things, I never take it for granted. I always feel inside me kind of like a little, whoo, you know, like that kind of, and it doesn't matter how many dead people there have been. It doesn't matter. It still always feels like a fresh surprise moment, and very, you're very present.
Yes.
And I just always acknowledge with a thank you. I don't know for sure that this will happen. And I think I'd like to get more confident, I guess, like other people who can sit there and just say, yes, I am a medium, I am a psychic, I am intuitive. And I surprise myself after I have some sort of a medium experience when I do shamanic work. And then I say, oh my God, I guess I am a medium, you know?
Yeah. And
I don't really take it for granted, or think that this, you know, and also, I don't know if this is the same for you, but there's certain times that I'm incredibly sharp with all of the intuition, and it's a flood, like for a few days, so much information is coming at me, dreams and things, and just knowing who's calling, who's arriving, the things that are all coming about. And then there's some days where it feels sort of like it's just a quiet, nothing is floating in on that day, and it's just a day of not having information coming at you. I don't,
Right,
it's
right.
not for me like 7 days a week that it's going on like this. And I was just wondering if you have a similar
Oh,
experience.
absolutely, absolutely. And there are even times where I'll be on a call with a client and like I'll just say, I can't see. I can't see what is there. I also look at it sometimes. I'm not meant to see. See, I don't believe it's coming. None of this is coming from me. Okay. None
Right,
of this is
right,
being brought.
exactly.
So what I am meant to see, I will share. If I'm not meant to see it, I don't see it. And I don't take it personally or say, oh, I'm not good enough. I can't see. I really believe that there's a veil there and we are not meant to know. We are not meant to see that because they're just things that we're just not meant to see for whatever reason that is.
And, I just experienced that this, I think it was in July, I can't remember, but my friend came from New York to visit, and he had lost his partner who had passed away. And I have been doing these shamanic, I call them blessings or healings, where someone comes to my home and we set up an altar and I play my jaw harp and I wear my shamanic clothing and we get in touch with the spirit of the person that they're missing or they've lost. Well, when I did this with his, it was the first time that I had an experience where it was like the spirit was saying to me, no, I'm sorry, I don't let you in. Nobody can come in. I didn't believe in that stuff when I had a body, and I don't believe in it now that I'm a spirit. And when I said it to my friend as it's happening, I said, everyone that I've done this with, I've never had like a wall of resistance. I said, but the nature of your partner is that he does not want me seeing or knowing anything. And he just cracked up laughing, telling me that, yep, that's the way he was down to the bitter end, that he did not believe in any of those kind of things and wanted to know nothing about them. So I felt like, well, that's as far as we'll go with him because he doesn't want us to go any further. And he sent us his message. So even though he doesn't believe he's sending the message because he's dead, we got the message. You're not into this
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
So I wanted to say that I read I'm just going to hold this up for a second because I printed it out from your
Oh,
site.
yeah. Mhm.
And I wanted to tell our listeners that if they just wanted to go onto the site and print this out for themselves before they got involved in taking a course, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what if, because I loved everything you wrote in these pages. And I felt they were, even though it might be designed for a child, I still felt it was just the same as an adult to be
It
able to.
is, it is. And it's for, when you think about it, look, we're like those Russian nesting dolls. We've got every age in us. All right. My favorite story when I was teaching middle school was the Sandra Cisneros story about 11. It's a little girl who's going to have her 11th birthday, but every single age is in her and she's sharing her experiences. And that was part of the what if. The what if is to just, it's really a precursor for people who are not ready to start going into the world of psychic phenomena. This is something that you can do with a child. You can engage with your children. You can have meaningful conversations. You can relate to them without having to stick a kid in front of, a screen or something. It's relatable. And you can do these activities with the child in you also. I mean, so that was the idea. Was it's an introduction. It's a way to ease people into the idea that there's just so much more than what we see with our eyes and with our five senses. And this way, we can really tap into that inner magic within our child and within ourselves. And if you're a grandparent, I mean, these are things you can do with your grandchildren. My grandkids are a little bit too young, so we're just having conversations at this point, okay? But one of my sons said to me, Mom, I can't wait for you to teach my son how to throw fireballs from his hand. And I'm like, okay.
You mentioned something that I didn't know was a thing, but I've actually been doing, and I didn't know it was a thing. Uh, During the COVID, I live out in an apple orchard, so I have 15 acres around me. So I got plenty of space to walk around and do stuff and be outside. And I decided to go buy myself a new bow and arrow. And I set up 3 bales of hay, and my son painted a bullseye on it. And I was shooting the arrow, the bow and arrow, just because for whatever reason, I feel drawn to this bow and arrow thing. And I started seeing what it was like when I close my eyes and I shoot the bow and arrow. And at some of the time, it felt like I was getting a better hit with my eyes closed than I was with my eyes open. And I was realizing that, oh, wait a minute, this bow and arrow thing is really about connecting to the invisible and being able to shoot the target.
Yeah.
And now
Yeah.
you're telling me that that was actually something that was part of the curriculum that the school your son went to, which was blindfolded archery.
So what we do is let's say the target. So, but the Tibetans did it. The Tibetans did it thousands of years ago. So instead of normal archery, you face the target. And what we do is we do not face the target. We face this way and we put the body this way.
Yes.
And so then you take your third eye and you see the target here. And then you align your third eye target and your body, and then you shoot.
Well,
you'd have to have the experience to see how amazing this is. Now, since I live in New York, I do not have an archery field where I can do any of this. I do this.
Come to my house.
Yeah, I do this in the swimming pool. So if I'm doing a lap and there's nobody there in the pool with me, there's always like the center of the pool. There's always, there's a space to look at. So I will put that space there in my third eye, and then I will swim to it. And in order to get there to the center, I practice this a lot. In order to get to the center, I have to be totally present. The moment that my thoughts go into the future, I swim off to another direction. I have a thought that goes to the past. I start swimming in that direction. And then I catch myself and I'm like, okay, now I'm back in the present and I can continue swimming this way. And that's how I do my laps. So it's like my focus is here to get to the other side. All my work is through the third eye.
Well, since it's a sunny, beautiful day, after our lovely conversation here, I'm going to go out and give it the try. I was closing my eyes. I'll try looking in a different direction and doing the focus from here, seeing that the bullseye is what I'm looking at through here.
Yeah, and then let us know and let me know. And Gail, also, if you have a pair of blinders, like those mindfolds, you work with those mindfolds, perfect. Put those on and see the target over here in your third eye. Put your body this way. You'll see soon, you'll see where you have to align yourself, but it's amazing how fast it will work.
Well, I'll give you a report after this. So we're winding down on our hour, and this is where I would like to talk a little bit about your book. And if you could share anything about the book for our listeners, and also that any information that you would like them to know about any upcoming events or anything where you might be teaching or upcoming online courses. They will have all the information in the description on the show, your website, how to contact you, the Psi Academy. But I'd love to hear from you.
Okay, so I have two books. One book is a children's picture book. It's only available through me. You'd have to email me in order to get a copy. It is the story of a little girl it's based on a true account of a little girl who performed telekinesis. It's an illustrated children's book, and it's called Annabelle and the Domino. And there are very limited a number of these books left right now. And they're available through me for purchase. Obviously, it's $14.99, but I'm only sending them to within the United States, as you can imagine, or Canada. And then the other book, Children Who Know How to Know, that is a reference guide created for parents and educators and anybody who wants to do this work with kids. And there are activities in there. Again, there's chapters on how the brain works. There's chapter on intuition, on the connection between thought and language. There is a chapter on intuition in terms of intuitive heart exercises. That this is a little bit off on a tangent, but it's also in my online program where I teach children how to connect with the intuition and the wisdom of their heart, which is then also psychic work. only it's called Intuitive Heart. So there's an entire chapter on that. And then there's a chapter on other experiences, like out of body experiences and seeing auras and really getting into the nitty gritty of what else is available, even some telekinesis. But that's in the Children Who Know How to Know book. And there are exercises, again, for the children to do, candle focus, but the parents need, this is not a book for a kid to necessarily pick up unless they're a teen, but otherwise it's for a parent to do. And it's easy reading. It's not, I really worked on the language so that it's easy to understand and that all of the exercises make sense. And all of the exercises have been used with children from ages 3 to 99. Okay, so that's Children Who Know How to Know. And then right now, the only work that I'm doing is the online course, which is at the Psi-Kids And then if they follow the link or they email me at ellymolina.com, they can reach me. I am also doing something, it's called the Midnight Portal. And this is an online community group. And this is open to everybody, kids or no kids. And I teach here. So my first topic this coming Wednesday on the 15th is going to be how to learn to speak the language and understand the language of your subconscious mind, so that in order to understand what the subconscious is doing, we have access to it and we have access to our intuition. And it is necessary for us to learn to speak its language because it has a very specific language and we need to get in tune with that. And so in the Midnight Portal, there are going to be exercises for teaching children and the adults how to do telepathy, remote viewing, all of these wonderful psi abilities. But there's also, the focus is also going to be on ontology, unconsciousness, conscious awareness, and human potential. So that will be a big teaching segment of it.
So just for some of our listeners, some of our listeners are remote viewers and people who are familiar with the characters we've talked about and the protocols. But there were two things you mentioned. I wondered if you could just give an example or explain to our listeners who might be new to all of this, which is, can you explain what does example of telekinesis? And could you explain the candle, which I know what this is, but could you explain the candle?
Focus?
Yes, the candle focusing, because they might like to try that themselves.
Right. And that's in, I have candle focus in the What If brochure. If they download that, it's free. It's 16 pages. But with the candle focus, if you're not supervising your child and you have a candle, you get a fake candle. All right. And what you do is you practice tucking away the body. So you sit there first and you stare at the candle for a few seconds and without moving your body. And the longer you can do it without moving your body, the more experiences you are going to have. That I cannot tell you what kind of experiences you're going to have because they're very unique. And this is why it's really good to have these experiences with an adult, because what I've noticed is when I do this with the older kids, they can work the candle without moving their body for up to an hour. And that's a lot. And then from that space, they can go into really seeing future events. So it is incredible, but they just need to know what they're going to be focusing on afterwards. Okay. And I don't do that in the candle focus. We're going to use that to see into a remote view, but it's more of a practice to control the body, because you know how kids are taught, kids in school are always yelled at, oh, don't sit still, concentrate, focus. I have a lot of focus activities in there also. We are not told how to focus. We are not taught how to concentrate. And how's a kid going to concentrate and focus if they've never been taught? When most adults don't know how to focus and concentrate, we think, oh, we're such great multitaskers. Well, it doesn't work that way. And so then if you're not focused and concentrated, then you're going to go take medication and you have ADHD or ADD or yada, yada. And so the exercises are geared to teach children how to control their body.
That's wonderful. And the telekinesis?
Telekinesis is moving objects with the power of your mind. So now in person, we could do this with spoon bending, which I started to do. I was listening to people who know Sean McNamara. Sean did a YouTube video back in 2019. I was sitting on my couch And all of a sudden, I'm like, I'm going to go do this. So I grabbed a spoon. I almost fell asleep during the meditation. And then when he said bend, yeah, we did a heck of a lot of spoon bending and fork bending that year. And that was the beginning. During COVID, I did a lot of teaching of spoon bending and bending. But telekinesis is where I teach the children how to move objects with their mind. We use dominoes. But now, again, here's the thing, Gail. It's not going to be like a kid's not going to sit down and be able to do this 1, 2, 3 because they want to. They have to learn how to control the body. They have to learn how to control the energy of the mind. And that energy is very powerful. That it creates an energy that can actually move and stop things. So I spent COVID practicing stopping a fountain just because, okay, because I wanted to use telekinesis. So I haven't seen the fireball come out yet, but so like I'm working on some things.
I think I saw something. I think it was on Sean's site where it was, I think there was a glass, you put a glass thing over the object and the object's in the middle, or it was hanging from a string, or I can't remember, but people can check that out. I think if they go to Sean McNamara's site.
Right.
So,
and we also did turning on flashlights. We use LED flashlights and we turn those on with our minds also. Again, this takes practice. All right. It takes practice. It's not something, and that's why the exercises that I have on my online course are really wonderfully easily developed. They are systematic. It's a protocol so kids can walk away with a sense of confidence and empowerment and know that they are capable of so much more.
well, for listeners out there who have children that have been put on drugs or have the parents really feel frustrated not knowing how to help their child, I hope that they look to you and your book and these things to see that there is other pathways to go on that may be able to help their child develop skills that they didn't realize was the issue that the child was having with to begin with. So this would really be a wonderful source for them to know. And I do hope that some of my friends that I have back in the East are, when they hear this podcast, they check out the things that you have to offer, because children are the future. And to be able to empower them and do these things, awaken their intuition, their awareness, empower them. That's the future of the next generations. And this is a wonderful thing. I'm just saying, we've just met, but I'm really thrilled to know the work that you do.
Thank you, Gail. And I'm so thankful that you have provided me with a platform and a space to share this work. It's necessary. The time is now, and we really do need to have this with our kids. We need to teach parents. We need to teach educators. We need to be doing this work. And so I'm really grateful for this platform and for the opportunity to share.
Well, I'm so grateful that you came here today and that you're a warrior that's going out there and really doing the work. And I would love to have you again sometime. I'd like to order the children's book from you, but we'll do that separately after on the email. And is there anything else before we end today that you want to share with our listeners?
Have conversations with your children and teach them that anything and everything is possible, and no shoulds. Stop with the shoulds. Should makes children feel bad. It makes us feel bad. So get rid of should and lighten up.
Very wonderful message. Well, thank you so much for being here today, Elly. And I want to remind our listeners that they can go to my website, asmallmediumatlarge.co, and they can find all the different shows that we've been having and also the shows I've been a guest on. If they'd like to find out all kinds of other information about other things, we would love if they would subscribe, comment, like, share. We enjoy doing the podcast so much. And remember, share your stories, because sharing stories can heal. Thanks, and have a wonderful week. Bye.